Join the Shot Talk Patreon at patreon.com/shottalk. You'll receive early access to videos, have the ability to submit questions to future guests, and more. Thanks and enjoy.
I kind of have this analogy that Hollywood is an egg, and you have the yolk of the egg in the middle. The yolk is a bunch of people who have great sensibilities and great taste and know when they have the gut, they know when something is working. And that yolk is surrounded by a massive portion of egg white, which is just a bunch of people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
They just don't. And they're all afraid to say yes to anything because they don't know whether or not it's going to work. They can't read Pulp Fiction and go, this is going to change cinema.
Hey everybody, this is Rodrigo. Welcome to another episode of Shot Talk. Today we have the esteemed Chris Capel.
Esteemed, I like that.
Esteemed, this guy.
I feel esteemed.
Now you and I, we've hung out before.
We go back, man. It's actually been a little bit.
It has been a little bit. Yeah.
You guys might see some catching up happen here.
I know. If we start talking about our respective children and families,
then apologies.
Sorry,
we'll cut that out.
No, yeah. but Chris, so a little background information for people. You have been doing CG animation for a while now. Started at a game studio, and then from there went to DreamWorks.
I moved up here in 2004 from Arizona to go to school at Noman, the Noman School of Visual Effects.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I took a couple classes, and I actually got really lucky.
Was it a very prestigious school?
I saw Snoop Dogg when I was there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and dude,
Snoop Dogg does CG?
The first week I was there, we're just before class getting ready for class to start, and Giovanni Ribisi walks in. He's just like, "Hey guys, what's up?"
The guy from Big Fat Liar?
From Gone in 60 Seconds.
No, I'm sorry. That's a different Italian. Sorry.
Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
I love that guy, but I had been in LA for a couple months. This was like the first celebrity, and it was so casual.
Yeah.
It's like, what class are you guys taking? What are you focusing on? And I was just like stunned. Like, I love.
Does it feel? Because I had the same experience coming to LA. It feels like that first week you meet like all these A-listers, and then all of a sudden either you just stop caring or like you just. I don't know.
I mean, I have a crazy thing where every time I would go to the ArcLight Hollywood, I would see a celebrity. It was like 8 times in a row I would see someone.
Dude, yeah.
Jesse Spano, dude. That was probably the best one.
From Saved by the Bell?
Elizabeth Berkley.
Whoa.
From Showgirls, Rod.
Did you tell her you were so excited?
Yeah, a couple times I yelled it, and then I got scared.
And then you started crying.
So I said, I'm scared, and I ran.
Ran and cried.
But no, Noman's a legit school. I had started teaching myself at home with tutorials and stuff. I don't know why I'm laughing, Rod. You and I, man, we just have this thing, dude. No, I started learning Lightwave. That was my first 3D program. So yeah, I started kind of teaching myself animation and kind of decided, okay, I think animation is what I want to do. And that partly stems from, believe it or not, I wanted to be an actor at one point. I know I'm super mellow now, but there was a time I was like obsessed with becoming an actor. And so animation I saw it as a way to put a performance onto a character. And, seeing other animation, I'm very competitive, I think, in every aspect. And so a lot of what, the art of animation and the love of it was there, but it was also seeing other people do it and saying to myself, that's a cheesy acting choice. Like,
it's not natural.
Right. Like I love this idea of wanting to come in and do some really crazy, believable acting choice on a character that would be like, whoa, that was so real for a minute, Yeah, dude. And so that was a big part of what made me want to do it. So yeah, I was at Noman for a couple months, and I got very lucky in that I took 2 classes. One, the teacher was at Disney. The other one, the teacher was Cam Hood, who was at DreamWorks. and he was a big shot there at the
Dude,
time.
I have a story about that guy because he was at DreamWorks for a minute. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
he
were
was there
there
for a
when
while.
Yeah. Well, no,
Well, he
like
became a director.
He left because after he tried directing, and then he came back to be an animator. But he felt like he was there for like 2 weeks, and he sat pretty close to where I was.
Oh,
I don't know if
okay.
you realize that because I think you were still on campus at the time.
Yeah, I think I was sitting. We had moved into the cubicles.
That's
I'd heard he had come back to work on like Kung Fu Panda 2 or something.
Yeah, he was actually there for animation to help us with animation. But the thing is that he did have a big long history, like you said, at DreamWorks, and he eventually got to the spot where he wanted to direct a short film. And I got the impression, I wasn't there for it, but I got the impression that didn't go over very well, and so he sort of fell from grace. And then I think that's got to be hard for somebody to then leave on those terms and then to come back making not even a lateral move, but like a step down kind of thing from directing. So I think
absolutely.
Anyway, sorry, a little Cam Hood story because I know he was part of Noman at the time. I watched some of his tutorials actually. I learned stuff from him. So.
Yeah, he I think it's an interesting thing because he did that short, DreamWorks First Flight, which is a guy waiting for a bus and a bird. He befriends this bird that falls out of a tree or something, and it's unfortunate because Pixar has this like crazy prestigious history of shorts. Like every movie, there's a short before it that's consistently mind-blowingly great.
You leave like a better person every time. Like you're like
right. Before the movie even starts, you're bawling.
Right.
But DreamWorks comes along and just kind of half-asses a short. Like I don't think he had the resources, obviously, that Pixar had of like having done 20 of them. They
just the pipeline.
These right. Yeah. And so it kind of felt that way. It felt underfunded, underdeveloped, and so it's you kind of wonder where to put that blame. But like he's a good dude, and he was going to direct Megamind with his co-creator of the short, and then that didn't work out for some reason. And let's just keep talking about Cam. I think this should be a Cam Hood focused. Yeah, no, but he was my teacher at Noman, and I got very lucky in that I had already done a bunch of work at home, and I had gotten my first freelance animation job in the middle of that first class. And so I had a plan to do the whole shebang at Noman, but I was getting animation work, and so I thought, well, I'll just take a couple animation classes and that will be that. And luckily Cam really dug my reel, and I would have still sent it to DreamWorks anyway, and someone still probably would have seen it, but he had the ability to kind of give it right to the person.
I don't know if you realize how many literal thousands of demo reels they get all like every year. It's a staggering amount of of reels that they collect. So I guarantee you that's a big reason why they probably took the time to even look at yours. Because I had that with Fred Nilsson actually. He was like, hey, here's a little sticky note, check this one out.
Cool.
So that's something we've talked about on the show where it's because people are curious about how it all works, and it's like, sadly, most of the time you can't just be talented. You have to have at least some guardian angel to sort of like, hey, let me shepherd you in.
It's interesting that is true of VFX now too, because that's always been true of like traditional Hollywood stuff. It's about who you know. But at least, around the time that I was getting into animation, I was also lucky in the timing of that, in that it had just kind of been democratized. Like computers got fast enough. And software was cheap enough that a person could learn it at home. They wouldn't have to spend all that money going to CalArts or whatever. You could teach yourself, and I did teach myself and avoided a lot of student debt. Because, then I got into DreamWorks and spent almost 8 years there. And when I came out the door, when they kicked me out the door, I flew out onto my face and looked around and realized, like, the industry has completely changed.
Yeah.
I've been in a cubicle for the last 7 years making DreamWorks movies and realizing like I am a dime a dozen now. Like, oh, okay, things are a little different.
The information got out there, right?
Yeah, education. Animation Mentor and these other things where just everyone's an animator now. And luckily I had the credits to be able to keep working, but like it was interesting to kind of poke your head out of the sand and go, where am I?
No, it's crazy. I mean, some of those guys. Some kids from Newgrounds that do animation, 2D animation work that is better than like some professionals I've
Cool.
run into out here in LA. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But so it's cool because you did the animation bit, but then I know what I always liked about you, Chris. What I always liked about you is that you ended up
One of the many things
venturing.
you like about me.
You ended up venturing to like live action stuff, which is something that I think a lot of animators want to do, but I think they're overwhelmed by the fact like how many variables there are. Or just like it seems kind of like this big mountain that's insurmountable. But you went for it and you did a lot of live action stuff. A lot of it like successful, funny internet stuff, and
Thank you, man.
Professional stuff now, right?
It's terrifying. I'll be honest, man. Like I remember, I mean, you helped me on my very first like actual short film. It wasn't like a sketch. We shot this zombie short called 3850, which it's rough around the edges, but it was the first attempt, and I remember, I'll never forget the first day of shooting. I'd prepped for it and done camera tests and stuff, and kind of knew how I wanted the look to be, and I found locations and stuff. And the people at this shop, EVS, where I would rent the equipment from and buy some of the gear, they would keep telling me over and over, like, just know that it's going to take longer than you think. It will always take longer than you think. And I'm just there going, dude, I got my storyboards, man. I know what I need. It's going to be fine.
I control the weather. It's cool.
Yeah. We don't need permits. Like, no one's going to come and tell on us for not having permits.
Oh my God, dude.
Dude, that first day.
Okay.
So the first location, an hour into it, some a-hole rich person on a hike saw us shooting and went and called the cops. And we got Super Cop out there, some lady Super Cop who was not having any of it.
The funny thing is that we weren't even in Los Angeles proper. We were kind of
up near Valencia.
Right, out near
But
Valencia.
I've actually heard that, I've been told since that it's harder to film up there.
Oh,
because a lot of film people live up there, and when they see people filming, they're like, get out of this is where I leisure.
Oh no.
I don't want my work.
We walked into the lion's den and we didn't even realize it at the time.
We were just little lambs.
We were little naive lambs.
It was a sobering day and then we went to the next, we got kicked out there. So it was like, well, okay, we'll go to the next location, and there's some guy four-wheeling everywhere. So it was like, okay, we can't use this either. So a lot of learning experiences on that first one. But, I remember in the middle of that first day in my head over and over just saying, I'm not going to do this. Like I said I was going to be, if I wanted to be a filmmaker, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It was that terrifying, like the realization of like just how long it takes to get a good take and set up and get a good shot where you're like, well, we got that in the can. Like it was just really a sobering realization. And it's not that it was real. It was just realizing the reality of it.
Yeah.
I had this.
I think for you though, because I think like so many of us, be it animation or film, you hop in and you don't understand that like sometimes there's like, how do I say? You try to do everything yourself, and you're like, I'm going to do the story, the animation, the coloring, And I think with filmmaking, like since we were pretty both new to it, we didn't even think about the idea of a camera or like a cinematographer or a camera guy. Like we were just like, we'll just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for you, it's become much more like easier to do because you realize that everybody on set has a very focused job, and it makes your job as a director way easier, right? Like
I mean, it's it's nice to say that I still have a ways to go, but I've done the gamut of wearing 20 hats all the way up to having an entire team of really, really talented people who it's like, oh, I'm actually on a real set here. I can just be the director. In that situation, the difference is the amount of questions you have coming at you is bananas. Like, I have yet to be on like an actual feature film set where I've been told it's just like dazzling how many questions are coming at you. But the latest thing I've done is I've done a few weeks as a field director at Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Yeah.
And so I've only been there. I've only done 4 weeks, and I'm just filling in for another director there. But
field director being that you're in the studio
directing the sketches that play during his show, and he has a lot more sketches I think than a lot of the other late night guys. They do a lot of sketch stuff, And so that is certainly far and away like the most legit crew I've ever had. Like, not only is everyone a huge family there, they've all been there for like 10 plus years,
Right.
but like they have it down to a science. I mean, the turnaround was insane. Like the first sketch that I did, we started rolling on our first shot at 10:15 a.m. on our first shot, and we delivered the final cut to Jimmy at 4 p.m. So it was like, like as you're shooting, you're sending cards up to the editors, and they're editing it while you're finishing shooting, and then I'm running up to the edit bay and sitting down, and they have giant red clocks everywhere, and at 4 p.m. is when we have to get it done to give it to Jimmy,
God,
and
dude.
I'm just going, we have time to look at a different take for this and tweak that and do that, and now we got to go show it.
And you got editors sort of making those selections for you.
So yeah, and that was the bizarre thing too. Is like, I've never not edited what I've shot.
Yeah.
I've edited everything I've ever shot, and so
I like to do the same, actually. Yeah.
I mean, dude, to me, the edit is where you find out whether or not you succeeded.
Yeah.
And so this was so bizarre to run up to the editor and he's already got half of it edited, or at least on the timeline, before I've looked at any takes. And so it was a bizarre moment, but he's a badass editor. Their editors are unbelievable. And so he got the comedic beats, he got what I was going for. I had these really crappy boards I had scribbled down that I gave to him that I don't think that they helped him very much, but it was really amazing to be surrounded by this crew of people that have been doing this for 10 years. They know the turnaround.
It's like a machine, right?
I was able to just kind of, every setup I'd tell the DP what we're doing next. He'd set it up, I'd look at the monitor and go, that looks perfect. Let's, keep going. I never had to be like, no, that's not what I was trying to get after. So that's been, exciting, but interesting, because at the same time, it's like, I can't go back to wearing even 3 hats now. Now that I've experienced like what it's like to just get to be a director, it's like, oh man.
I think that's what people don't realize is it's the very long and hard road to be an independent artist, because I think it's just that mental fucking balancing act, right? But yeah, once you're on a studio level and you can just focus on the one thing that you want to focus on, that's why so many people are clamoring for that job, it feels like, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And it's interesting to, I guess just realize to realize more and more just how much the director determines. Like Guillermo Del Toro is someone who is renowned for the art direction, the overall look of his movies there's almost something cartoonishly stylized about it, so fantastical, and it's like, that's all coming from him. He has amazing art directors and production designers and people around him that are plussing his ideas and everything like that. But like, I think it's also important for a guy like him, or any creative, right, who wants to end up doing stuff like that, that's why it is so important to not, how do I say, like, you have to sort of go through the fire and make your own stuff, so that way you can sort of solidify your style or what you usually go for. So that way, like, I feel like you don't want to graduate, how do I say it? If you join a big studio as a PA and you sort of graduate through the system to eventually a director spot, at that point, you're sort of a company person and you don't really have that strong of a voice anymore. Versus if you've had your own stuff to begin with, where you could sort of solidify your artistic identity, then when you get put into a new situation, like, I think it's easier. I think 100%. I mean, there's something about scrambling around on a dirt road and getting kicked out and having to go find another location and the refiner's fire, if you will, that's I look back on those days where we were working on that together with a lot of fondness, it's interesting too, though, because like, all the stuff I've shot, 90% of the stuff I've shot has been out of pocket. And so not only was I wearing a lot of hats for most of it, but I was also like looking at the clock. Oh my God. Like, this is my money burning if we don't
you're
get
wearing your own
this done.
producer hat. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wish, part of me wishes, I think it's a little too late to do this, but I wish I could go to like AFI or something, because in that environment, you can just go, okay, what kind of a director am I? What do I want to, let me try something. Let me try and emulate this and that and figure out kind of what my style is. And I was only able to do that like 20% of the time on these other shoots, because I was like freaking out about the camera not working, and and my wife is doing craft services, and so, having said that, I think, I'm still getting to that destination where I am figuring out what my voice is, but it would be cool to have rich parents and go to like a school where you can just, it's still hard work, but you can only think about,
Right. That's fair. Yeah. No, I mean, I do think a lot about, like, I don't know, I guess our mutual heroes, how it does feel like they did, like a guy like Guillermo, like he didn't appear in America and start working. Like he had his own stuff that he did in Mexico and in Europe and places like that. So yeah. Well, speaking of that guy, it's funny because we were both on campus when he was working at DreamWorks.
We were, man.
Before we started rolling, we both had this like, wow, we really should have made the most of that and gone to him and showed him stuff, right? Like I remember walking toward the parking lot, and he was walking out of the parking lot, and it was just the two of us, and I saw him and I just like froze. And he such a good dude, like he saw that I was like fanboying, and he was just like, come to me, come tell me you love. He didn't do that, but he was very, the minute he realized it, he smiled, and I walked right up to him and was like, oh my God, you're an icon, man. And he would just put his arm around me, and I walked with him back. And did he cradle you back to your desk?
If he could have, he would have. I know that. But I told him like, I'm an aspiring director. This was like, weeks into me deciding I wanted to be a director, and so I was like, I'm an aspiring director, and and he looked at me and he said, don't aspire, just direct.
Oh, look at that.
Whoa.
Some good advice.
I'll remember that. I don't always follow that advice, but
That was that was Yoda right there. It's like, do or do not.
Going off of that though, I will say that, I have a writing partner, and his name is Rich, and we often talk about how much we've learned about the business side of Hollywood and just the way things work. And we're still not where we want to be, but we look back to like even 3 years ago, and it's like, man, we've done enough and had enough meetings and written a few things to realize some things about Hollywood. And that saying of don't aspire, just direct is an absolute truth, man. Like, you just have to prove you can do it, and you got to prove you can do it several times, and then they'll let you do it. Like you can write as much as you want to write, you can be as charming as you want in all these meetings, but like Hollywood is, not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I kind of have this analogy that Hollywood is an egg, and you have the yolk of the egg in the middle, and the yolk is this is a bad example, but I shouldn't say Harvey Weinstein, but look, Harvey Weinstein was the king of Hollywood because he had really good taste. He could read a script and know just from reading it whether or not it would work.
Yeah, he was good at his job.
Right. Yes, he was very, there's a reason he was, so powerful. Right. He was good at his job. And the yolk is a bunch of people like that who have great sensibilities and great taste and know when they have the gut. They know when something is working. And that yolk is surrounded by a massive portion of egg white, which is just a bunch of people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
They just don't. And they're all afraid to say yes to anything because they don't know whether or not it's going to work. They can't read Pulp Fiction and go, this is going to change cinema.
And their neck's on the line if they make a bad call, right?
Exactly. Right. Everyone's afraid to say yes. You get fired for saying yes. And so this massive egg white is just waiting for other people to say this is good, and then they jump on that bandwagon. So the more you can shoot something and put it in front of their eyeballs, and it's unequivocal, undeniably good, then they're not afraid. They're not afraid anymore.
Right.
And so
positive buzz and attention, like something going viral, like that'll get you meetings. That'll get you at least a foot in the door. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's It's been interesting, man. A lot of realizations about, I've had a lot of general meetings, mostly general meetings.
What kind of questions do they ask you at these meetings?
It's really just they've seen other stuff you've done, and they contact your reps or whatever, and they want to meet you generally. It's basically like find out whether or not you're not a total weirdo.
Right.
You're a personable guy or gal, and then it's what else do you have? I saw this short. I read this pilot. It's really great. What else do you have?
I've heard that a lot too, because I've heard of the what else do you have question, where you go in, you try to make a strong of a punch as you can with the concept that you do have, and even if that goes off well, they always follow it up with like, all right,
always
give us more. So
always,
I've noticed that
always, and
I think the motivation there is that I'm sure that they're also keeping in their heads specific things that they're looking for, because that's probably the directive. They're saying, people want fucking, love stories about ghosts.
Right.
And we like you, but like, hopefully we can pick something out of your library that fits our
it will always be, they'll always give you a spiel about their company and what they're looking for. And, based on what they've seen or read of yours, from there you kind of go, well, okay, we've got these other ideas. And sometimes I'll pitch in the room, just softly pitch stuff. But a general is not really a pitch meeting. It's more about just, here's what I had. I'm not crazy. And here are some other basic ideas. But then I'll go home and this is what I have learned, is that generals are absolutely pointless if you don't have more material to follow it up with. Like, I have this long list of industry contacts now, half of which are probably at a different studio now. Like the turnover is crazy in Hollywood, but also, half of which I had the general with, and it's been 6 months since I've emailed. They don't even remember who I am. Sure. And so Rich and I have really been trying to crank out material and just develop the shit out of some pilots and series ideas, and we're getting to that place where we have several things that after a general I can say, well, this series might fit with what you guys are after, or here's a treatment for this sci-fi thing or whatever, and so it really is, you hear it a lot, but Hollywood, the directing side anyway, the live action side, well, even animation, if you're wanting to create a show or direct a movie or something, it's about having as many irons in the fire at all times as you can, because you can have 10 things in various stages and one of them will go. Yeah. There's an interesting saying, they call it the slow no of Hollywood. And that is, Hollywood moves at such a slow pace, and it usually is just a slow humming and hawing of like, they were excited about this 2 months ago. I haven't heard back in 3 weeks, and it's them slowly going on to the next shiny object.
One sentence email saying like, oh yeah, totally, man, give us a second.
Right. Yeah. It's, I hate this town, Rob. I hate it. No, I think everyone hates this town until they
go live up in a mountain in Alaska.
Fuck it. I think everyone hates this town for a period until they break through.
Sure, yeah.
Until they learn how it works and they get that breakthrough. Yeah, we're not there yet. But.
Brad Bird called it I forget if it was an interview or something, but he called it like the iron door of being a filmmaker. Like once you break through that, that's the hardest part, So.
Well, and I think what it really all boils down to is people just want to know they can trust you with their money. The minute you make something that makes someone any significant amount of money, it becomes exponentially simpler to get the next thing made. You're never handed anything, like even Edgar Wright has to prove his next thing is going to work to some degree. Right.
Always has to sell himself.
Right. You have the Spielbergs and Camerons that don't have to do that anymore, but that's very...
Well, let me ask you, Chris, so if you had a dream situation and you're making a feature-length movie, what tone or style or genre would be your dream situation? Because you do a lot of funny stuff, but at the same time, your first short that we worked on together, the zombie thing, was it was very dramatic. I mean, it had elements of humor, but it also ultimately was supposed to, it
was like a sci-fi drama almost. Right. I mean, that's a great question, man. I I really do have two paths here. The comedy route is something that, I mean, I love comedy, and comedy has been kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's gotten me meetings.
Right.
It's what's moved us forward. And
I will
so,
say that a lot of people say that comedy is really hard. I know I
right.
hear that coming from like directors that I really admire a lot, who do really dramatic, dark shit. But
Mhm.
it is funny how I think we both agree that like comedy is yeah, it's like kind of low hanging fruit. Like it's actually
Right.
pretty easy to get it to work.
Well, and I think it's because I agree with that sentiment that comedy is much harder than drama
Oh,
to
really?
do.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because it's
guess-
way more of a gut thing.
Right.
Like you do to some degree on set in a dramatic scene. When Meryl Streep is like having a take where she's crying, like everyone on set is in that moment. They all are going like, this is working.
Oh,
But
I
like
see.
on a comedy set, half the crew is laughing and the other half is kind of like, huh, or pretending, or isn't laughing.
Oh, I see.
So I feel like comedy, like knowing when something is funny, is much more of a natural, something you can't really learn to know when it's working. Certainly on the page.
Right.
Like on set, it's easier to know when it's working because you're seeing it, but reading it on the page, that's
Part of me thinks that, but as a director, I mean, you're also, I know that you're thinking about the overall thing in your head. You're thinking about the overall edit and how it's all going to come together. So I would imagine that even if one little shot isn't getting the response that maybe you want, like you're still kind of thinking about the whole thing. Like, trust me, it'll be funny once I insert it into the rest of it, right?
Yes, there are definitely times when like we get something and I'm in my head like, that's great, and no one's laughing, but it's like I know where this is going to lay in the edit, and like there's a rhythm to
Matt
comedy.
and Trey Parker experienced that a lot when when South Park was at its like all time high. Like I think it was the Lemmy Winks episode where they just on a whim were like, we're gonna have the fucking gerbil who goes up the guy's ass and starts singing like all these
on a journey
these spirit guides, and how everyone on the production was like, you guys are out of your minds. This is weird.
It's
and
one of the funnier.
It's legend now.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
that's
great.
amazing.
So,
yeah, that's something that's really important to try and cling to in those moments too, because that's the scary thing about that's another part of what makes comedy harder too, is like when I'm on set shooting something comedic, I'm way more terrified of like, it's got to work. We got to get this to be funny. Whereas if it's something dramatic, you're still like, it's got to work, but there's less, like, it's just easier to be dramatic. I think it's just it's comedy is it all relies on the same ingredients. I guess I would say comedy relies on them more.
right.
They say casting. The three most important parts of being a director are casting, and casting.
Right.
And that is absolutely so true, but majorly with comedy, like, dude, they've got to have that magic between them. More magic.
So the answer to your question,
Anyway.
then is you'd want to do something dramatic if you were doing.
I mean, there's a comedy route, and then my partner and I just wrote another sci-fi feature that I want to send to you to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, for sure.
But if I could choose, I would want to make this feature we just wrote. We're so excited about it, but that's the tricky thing about Hollywood too, is my reps are a little nervous to send that script out because we don't have anything to prove I can do sci-fi.
Sorry, I gotta say, I remember it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when you shot me over a script, and it was the one about, it was a drama, but it was about how it was set, I think 2050, 2070.
Yeah, something like that.
And VR had become mainstream. And it was like this, this cool story about like a family and a father and his daughter and this and that. But you had all these VR was very important to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And just that world that you created, and you telling me like, this one script is getting a lot of traction. It's really interesting. And I remember thinking, I bet you somebody else is probably doing something or working on something like that. And fast forward to today, and obviously Ready Player One is a Spielberg movie that drops last year. So I couldn't help but connect those dots and be like, I wonder if that was one of those, like we were talking about earlier, like the yoke is kind of keeping an eye out for VR related stuff, because Stevie over here is putting together possibly one of the biggest movies ever. And if that does well, what else you got?
Right.
We want other movies that are going to be doing that stuff.
Yeah, that, it's interesting. It seems like there's a pulse of that you got to kind of be aware of like what's hot, and what's cool is that what's hot right now is grounded high concept sci-fi is really popular. Netflix is making that really popular right now, and that is style. Right, and that's the road. Kind of what you're talking about with that feature that I had written. This other sci-fi thing that I've written, they both take place in really small towns. And I love this idea of like, it's the future, but people still live in trailer parks. The air conditioning still breaks at 7-Eleven. It's like, you're going to have trashy towns 100 years from now, And so it's an exciting time to be trying to make stuff like that. I have learned that I need to go out and make another sci-fi short.
Yeah, dude.
3850 is not gonna cut it. Sure. But so that's something we're trying to figure out.
I think you're equipped at this point, having been through so many different styles of production, right? It only makes sense.
Yeah,
that next time through will be like even better than the last.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm excited to do that and only be wearing one hat, as we talked about before.
I know, as long as I've known you, you've always liked fantasy, sci-fi based stuff. I know you used to go through those big Terry, what do you call them?
Yeah, so the Wheel of Time got acquired by Sony. This is 13 books. They're all like over 1,000 pages long. It's this epic fantasy story where the heart of it is really just, the Dark One is trying to take over the world. It's like Sauron, but it's so believably executed.
So it feels like that is going back to 3850 and everything you've been talking about. Like you like to have the fantastical elements, but then executed with this humanity and this realism that sort of almost validates everything else, right? It makes it feel more believable.
There's this amazing independent sci-fi movie called Primer. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, so Shane Carruth, I almost don't want to say anything about it. If anyone hasn't seen it, but you're into like grounded sci-fi, Primer is like the quintessential movie in that way. And Primer is what, I grew up loving fantasy, Tolkien and all that stuff. And I had read some, Jurassic Park made me read a bunch of Michael Crichton stuff as a kid. We share that love of Jurassic Park. And that turned me on to sci-fi, but I didn't quite realize, and I loved, Sphere and Congo and these grounded, believable books about what it would really be like to create a park full of dinosaurs,
Right.
So I only realized much later after seeing Primer kind of reminded me of that love of that believable, grounded sci-fi.
I would say Moon is another one,
totally,
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Moon is, there's an eeriness to the sci-fi elements. And so that's why these things that I'm developing, I'm from a small town as well, and so I love this idea of a junky little town where something sci-fi comes in, and it's a very matter of fact kind of treating something that's fantastical to you and I, matter of fact.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Star Wars. Everyone saw these ships that were dirty and junky, and that was like a new kind of thing at that time.
Right.
Sci-fi was always sparkly, amazing looking.
Ethereal on another level. Right. Everyone's wearing silver jumpsuits.
Right. It was lived in. It was grimy. That's exciting to me.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think there's a return to that because it felt like, I don't know, it felt like the 80s did that really well, and then the 90s, at least the traditional sci-fi, it got kind of, I don't know, maybe it was just the stories that weren't really all that great.
Well, and CG kind of happened in the 90s, CG, and maybe then everything's
had this
Independence
almost
Day,
too pristine look, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the technology now, because I don't know if you saw the last Blade Runner, but they did a really nice job with that. So
I did. That was like just.
Let me ask you: think it was better than the last?
I mean, I've only. Don't crucify me, but the first Blade, it's fine. It didn't change my life. I saw it way later, and it's a great movie. It's
Oh.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
But like I won't pretend that like I that it had enough of an effect on me to even really compare the new one. The new one, I was just in awe of the
new one
the
had-
execution. It was
the
just
new one
like
had-
this is so beautiful.
Yeah, no. It had a plot that kept going, that kept you going.
Yeah.
I'm probably in the same boat as you are, where I thought the Blade Runner was important because of what it showed sci-fi could be.
Totally.
But in terms of story and entertainment and just keeping my attention, the new one I think is way better that way. So
I think I would agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah, the only thing is I'm a little bit tired of the revolution trope, and when it got to that point in the new one where he finds the underground resistance, I was just kind of like,
seeing it, yeah,
just tired of resistances rising up to fight powers,
right.
It's not their fault. There's been a million other movies that do that, and that's why I was kind of like, okay, but I mean, dude, that movie is
That's
still
funny.
unbelievable.
Yeah. So Chris, so just to kind of go back a little bit, because you did mention that you were at DreamWorks for 8 years, and I know that you're also now doing more creature-based stuff.
Yeah.
So do you find? I mean, obviously there's an obvious difference that one is like realistic, and the other one is more performance-based. Do you prefer one or the other? Or
I do actually. It's interesting. I feel very fortunate to have been at DreamWorks as long as I was, and to work on all those movies. But I always felt at DreamWorks that I felt inadequate almost the whole time.
Really?
There are just some, Gabe Hordos. You're sitting next to Gabe Hordos. It's like, well,
yeah,
I like animation, but this guy's like he's a god. Like he has a level of just natural ability that's like. And like Ludo and Dave Pate, it's like, well, I'm over here toiling away, and they're just like gifted. And so I never felt like I was gifted in that way. But I felt like I could do the work well enough to not get fired, so that's fine.
Right.
But I originally got into Jurassic Park was my Star Wars. That was a movie that changed my life.
That's for both of us, I think.
Yeah. And I wanted to animate dinosaurs like that. That's why I got into animation. And the acting part of it was a part of it, but that was trumped by the love of Lord of the Rings that was just coming out around the time that I was like, I'm going to be an animator. I'm going to be in visual effects. I'm going to do it. And so I was at Duck Studios. Was my very first job. I was animating for a commercial, and I would go there on Saturday when I didn't have to. I'd stay late. It was just like. Make this good enough to like put on a reel that I can get another job. And I was in talks with Weta at the time to maybe go work on King Kong.
Cool.
And it was like, I felt like such a hack of like they're really gonna let me. They're gonna, what a bunch of idiots. But
I'll
hey,
do whatever you want.
Yeah. And then I got into DreamWorks, and like, who's gonna say no to that?
Right.
So I went, and it was surreal and amazing to do that, but I lost sight of the fact that I wanted to do creature stuff, and I was doing character stuff there, and I have realized since the latest thing I've been doing, I can't say much about it because it's not out yet, but it's going to be a thing for Netflix, and I got to do a lot of creature stuff.
Cool.
And a very renowned studio here in LA that does a ton of amazing creature stuff. I was working for a company they had outsourced to. So I was working from home, but it was for this studio.
Oh, nice.
Not to be too, nebulous, but it was an opportunity to like flex those creature muscles again. And what I have realized is, not only do I love. Can you wait? No, not only do I love creature stuff way more than character stuff, but I am way better at it. I just have a natural.
That's interesting
for it.
I mean,
guess.
I know you're saying that you didn't consider yourself demigod level, but I always thought like at least you were one of the better ones at like I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm serious.
Man.
Like I always thought like at least your acting choices and your polish always.
Thank you, man.
Was like, oh cool, yeah, Chris is good. You know what I mean?
Thank you. That's cool to hear.
Yeah, but that's I had no idea about that you specifically started out wanting to do creature and
that was like the dream. And
And I noticed on your IMDb that you had stuff for Ragnarok, Ragnarok.
Yeah, I
right?
did previs for Thor.
Okay.
And
Oh,
it
so that's
was
sorry.
cool.
So for people who don't know, that's
And dude, I burned that bridge so hard.
Oh, no.
I burned the shit out of that bridge, man.
Did you piss off
Sorry,
Taika
third
Waititi?
floor. If anyone from the third floor is watching this, I'm sorry. I deserve to never go back there again.
So previs, for people who don't know,
And-
that's sort of
yeah.
like pre-animation. So you're just
Right.
setting up the models,
Right.
the
It's
proxies.
more about the environment is way more fast paced. The turnaround is a lot faster. But what's cool about it is that you don't need to have the level of polish because it's previs. But it was previs for a Marvel movie, so it was like
They
insane
wanted some,
previs.
yeah.
And the guys at third floor are amazing. Like they do amazing stuff. And I was kind of a generalist there, and
Yeah.
so they were very gracious in like helping me, learn these other disciplines well enough to kind of do a little bit of everything. The reason that I burned that bridge, and this kind of segues, or is a nice callback to the whole Hollywood thing, is around that time, we were getting our official my writing partner first, like, green light to be paid to write a series, a comedy series. And so I was just like, I'm done, guys. See ya.
Right.
I'm going to go write,
Me and Taika are gonna hang out one day.
Yeah, but like, I was so naive in the slow no of Hollywood. This was a slow yes, but it was.
I remember this series. I remember you.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah,
We talked about it.
I had sent you some. So the realization was just that, like, even when you get the green light, it's still 6 months before like contracts are signed, and and then even after contracts are signed, no one really cares. Even
Right.
the people who've greenlit it, they just kind of don't care until you've made them money.
Yep.
And so that was really, I'm glad we went through that experience, and we're really proud of the episodes that we wrote, and hopefully we got them back, and so hopefully we'll get to shop them around and one day see them shot because they're hilarious. But it was kind of a realization of like, you don't sign the contract and then everyone, the producers and everyone, gather around a table like, here we go, guys. Like when I got the meeting to finally the kickoff meeting to finally like do this after months and months of emails and waiting. I had the meeting on a Wednesday, and I was sitting across from them, and I'm like, all right, guys, when do we start? And they're like, oh, you started Monday. They didn't even tell me that we had started.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
I was such an insignificant blip on they didn't even bother to let me know after months of like, when are we starting? Oh yeah, you started on Monday. You're two days down.
Just an aside. Like, by the way.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, this is Hollywood. Okay, until you've made someone money, this is Hollywood. And that's fine. I'm not going to be bitter and go home and sulk. It's just realizing that this is the business.
This city, like everyone. I remember Mike Stern, another animator at DreamWorks, like because he made that short with Animation Mentor, and I think it made its rounds pretty good. But he was like, man, the one adjective to describe the business is desperation. Like this whole city is just people wanting so badly to be part of any sort of action, and it's I keep going back to your analogy. It's that white, it's not the actual yolk. It's all that just voluminous white. You know what I mean? That's like really hard.
And you're passing out material to as many of them as you can, and you're hoping that one of them accidentally stumbles into David Fincher's scene, or someone with some modicum of taste who can read it and go, this is great.
Right.
And I know I'm sounding a little bit like everything I do is great and no one gets it. That's why I'm not working, And so, if you want to punch me in the face, I get that, But at the same time, like, it's such a cliche of like, if you want to go to Hollywood, you got to be prepared to hear no a lot.
Yeah.
But dude, like, it's not just being prepared to hear no a lot. It's having the self-confidence to not doubt yourself after hearing no every day. Everyone's reading something. You write something that you're like, comedically, for me, comedy, it's like, sounds super douchey, but it's kind of like music in that there's a rhythm. When I write it on the page, I want to then execute that on the day to the rhythm that I read it at to know that it's going to be funny. And so I write something that I'm like, this is so funny. Like, Rich and I are so proud of this. And I give it to someone and they're just like, I don't get it. It's, or they don't want to do it. And I'm over here going, how do you not want to do this? This is going to get so many laughs. But like,
well, they can't.
You have to.
It's like you're saying, they can't visualize it. They can't see it play out. I had a meeting once at Cartoon Network, and this guy, I won't say who he is, but I went in and talked to him. And before it even got started, he had this glazed over look in his eyes. And there I was, very excited about this idea, which I still like a lot. And I'm like, oh man, and this character and that character and this.
Sure.
And he looked like he was about to fall asleep. So I kind of read that and I thought, okay, well, I brought an animatic, so let me just play that. So then I hit play, it plays the whole thing. And as soon as that's over, he perks up in his seat and he's like, so what is this character doing? And this is all stuff, he's asking questions that I've already explained, but I didn't fault him for it because I hadn't won him over yet.
Dude.
But it wasn't like, that's so important to have a proof of concept.
Visuals are so powerful, man. Even an animatic will blow people away.
Right.
Like, that's so true, man.
Yeah.
And look, like some of this stuff that it's not like everything I do is gold and everyone who reads it is a schmuck.
Right.
But I guess the point would be that whether or not what you have is gold or not, you have to cling to the belief in yourself in this industry. You just, if you're not prepared and ready to know that you have to cling to it, the no's are going to make you give up.
Do you find that gets easier the older you get? Because I don't know, I think when you're young and I think a lot of animators come from a place of like, oh, I'm trying to be entertaining. Oh, I'm trying to be funny. Like I'm trying to get that validation from the audience or from whoever. But then I don't know, after a while you start to like anybody should, you start to learn more about yourself and more about like what works and what doesn't work. And so
absolutely.
Because I'm sitting or I'm developing some ideas now where it's like, it's not a matter of like me hoping that they're good or not. It's just a matter of like, how am I going to get these done? Like to me, it's no longer like, gosh, I hope people like them. Now it's just more like, well, how can I make them? How can I make them happen? So I don't know if over the years you've steered more that way or it's still a little bit of a, oh, I hope, I don't know.
I mean, it's still a little bit of both. Like, Rich and I all constantly marvel at like how much we've learned about the importance of development and killing your babies. Like we look back to, I was a part of Project Greenlight in 2014 or 15, and that
was with Matt Damon and
and I almost won, and that would have been cool. But I came out of that with this feeling of like, well, I just almost won Project Greenlight, so where's all the, send me the scripts, give me the meetings, and it obviously didn't happen. But I look back to Rich and I, coming out of that experience, really galvanized to like, let's use this momentum to and I got a manager out of it, and I started getting these general meetings. But we would look back at the material for the few ideas that we had at that time. And how we thought these like 7 pages of of two ninjas who want to believe they're real ninjas, a funny 7 pages. We were ready to hand that to people.
Yeah.
We were so naive about like what it actually means to develop something.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? Like to kill your babies. Like, yeah, that's funny, but it doesn't work because of this and that and this. Be willing to kill an idea because you're gonna have a better one. And it's cool to see now that like how we're really strict about like developing stuff and not going with the first iteration and being willing to
explore the possibilities,
explore it and kill parts of it and rethink other parts. And I can't tell you how many times we've just gotten rid of something we loved because we weren't sure about it, and then an hour later we're just like, oh my God, this is amazing, like this is so much better, and you have that previous draft to look at as proof, to go look at how much better this is. Like it's objectively better. And so
that's cool.
Yeah,
I've heard similar things from like those Simpsons writers back when season 4 through 6 or whatever, the heyday, right? And they would talk about like they would kill so many jokes, but then ultimately, like, it made some of the best produced Simpsons episodes.
Totally,
which is,
man.
Which is really
Totally.
cool.
Kill your babies, man. That's
So if people learn anything from this, it's make, what did Guillermo say? He said,
don't aspire, just direct.
don't aspire, just direct, and kill babies.
Kill
your babies.
children.
Yes.
Kill small humans. Kill them.
Exactly. We're here to educate.
Yeah.
So, this is just for my own personal curiosity, because I wasn't there for this, but I know that you were on campus when Seinfeld was helping put together B-Movie.
B-Movie.
I've heard legendary stories about that production, and as someone who was there, for it, I'm just curious if you have any interesting anecdotes or just the sheer weirdness of having a stand-up comedian come in and be like, hey, direct a fucking animated 90-minute feature. Like, do that.
I mean, I'm trying to decide how candid I should be here.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of interesting thoughts about that experience. And, at DreamWorks, when you're getting ready to go on your next movie, the animation crew, everyone goes into the theater and we watch an animatic of the whole movie. You watch, an hour and 20 minutes of animatic. And I just remember all of us sitting in that theater watching this animatic for B-Movie, and then coming out, and it was just this like slow, dejected walk back to our seats of like, this is the next year of our lives.
You were working on like legendary stuff as it pertains to internet memes. Like B-Movie is huge.
If we could have seen what it would become, that's awesome. And like, every movie at DreamWorks at that stage, in that format, they're pretty rough. They're rough. It's rough. And so this wasn't really like a knock on this movie in particular. Actually, it was.
I was gonna say, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to backpedal a little bit here. I don't know. Whatever. It was a long time ago. I'm not welcome back at DreamWorks.
Listen,
I was a terrible employee. Let me just say that. Like, when they let me go from DreamWorks, it was a long time coming.
B-Movie is objectively one of the biggest piles of shit.
It's a terrible
ever.
movie.
So don't feel like you're trying to protect the DreamWorks brand or anything.
It's interesting because I think the higher ups at DreamWorks, from what I heard, they weren't planning to have Jerry be as involved as he was. That was a surprising thing. He basically directed the movie. Like he was in every dailies, and he just didn't understand animation. He didn't understand the reason why you block something and approve that before you spline it out and make it impossible or very difficult to change. And so he would give giant changes in the 11th hour of your shot, and so that's why we were coming in on Saturdays and Sundays at the end of that movie, because he just didn't understand that process. And it was funny the amount of times in dailies he would start giving notes on layout, animation notes on layout, and it was like he just never could see. It just felt
you would
like
think somebody would step in and sort of give him a 411 and be like, hey, Mr. Seinfeld, by the way, here's a very rudimentary, basic crash course on how animation works.
Well, he wasn't the most approachable guy in that way, too. Is like, it was interesting because here's a story that I think that tells. God, I can't talk right now.
No,
here's an anecdote that kind of
yeah.
So one time in dailies, there's a scene in B-Movie where Vanessa, I think is her name, she talks to Barry for the first time, and this is the first time a bee has spoken to a human, and she thinks over the course of this scene, she thinks she's dreaming, so she stabs herself she's in the kitchen, she stabs herself to like wake herself up, and then the scene continues. And in dailies they usually only show you a section of shots that we're like looking at the moment, and then it'll repeat. So the sequence started with her doing that, and then it continued, and they kept talking, and this is a room full of dailies, and then it naturally loops. And so he's talking, and then there's a beat, and then she stops, and then she stabs her hand again to wake herself up again. And everyone died laughing. Like the timing of it was so great. It was like a happy accident of like, that's a perfect moment for her to try and stab herself again. Yeah. And you have 50 people who have just confirmed to you that this works as a joke. But he didn't put it in.
Whoa.
He wouldn't. I got the sense that he didn't. It had to be his idea. I might be wrong about that, but it was just it was frustrating to have such objective proof that this joke works and not put it in. Whatever.
No, I mean that's a big thing. I think a creative leader, because that is something you run into a lot out here. It's where the ego sometimes gets in the way of what's best for the story, what's best for the comedy, what's best for the overall production. Because hopefully maybe a guy like him has grown as a person, blah, 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 blah. But you still run into that a lot in this town where it's like, it has to be my way, and it doesn't matter if it's the better decision or not. But it was my decision. So.
Well, and someone like Jerry Seinfeld is like probably close to a billionaire. You know, he's such an icon that I'm not surprised that the guy has very, very strong opinions on comedy, and so that's fine.
Right.
But I would say to the whole thing of listening to other people, I just remind myself that Kubrick, who's maybe the greatest ever, he wanted ideas from everyone, and he would take the best ones. That eyelash in Clockwork Orange, that was some random makeup person's random suggestion, and he saw that was brilliant. Yeah. So I mean, if the greatest of all time can be open to other ideas, then I probably should be too.
Exactly. No, I mean that's I think that's a director's job. Is like it's not doing everything yourself, like we talked about earlier. It's not like doing the drawing and the coloring and the cinematography and the lighting. It's recognizing talent. It's casting. It's being you're perfect for this. You're perfect for that. That's a great idea. I'm going to cherry pick from the best and put it all together. And hopefully the whole thing comes out.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and that's the dance, is like doing all of that while also having a vision that is cohesive and
that doesn't compromise the vision for sure. Because that's another fair point. It's like sometimes I think it's that's a very specific situation, but where it's like, I don't know, like you ever watch a movie and everything's kind of going along a pretty good way, and all of a sudden it takes tonally a weird like spike or a pull in another direction, and it's like, oh, I think the director, however that production went, like there wasn't this consistency of vision or something, because that's another thing that I think the director has to worry about, is saying, even though that's brilliant and that made me laugh and that's really cool, like it's not fitting.
It doesn't work because of this and this and this. Puzzle, for sure, right? For sure.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think that's.
I mean, obviously with B-movie, he showed everybody. So
right. Well, no, I think especially these days, man, you can tell when a movie is soulless. You can tell when a movie was made by committee. Like The Last Jedi, for example. It just doesn't have a viewpoint.
Did you contribute to the remake fund? I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, there's a remake?
They're trying, supposedly. I don't think it's going to happen, but
no.
It turns out
it's over, man. It's done.
It's weird. I'm actually at a point now where I actually want the last movie spoiled for me, because I'm emotionally not invested anymore.
What are they going to do?
Right.
Like, granted, JJ set up some stuff. Maybe it wasn't all amazing, but like,
at least he cared about the characters.
Well, and I heard that him and Kathleen Kennedy butted heads on she didn't want him to do it, and since Last Jedi and Solo performed so poorly, I think Kennedy's out, or at least JJ is back for 9 when he wasn't supposed to be. But I don't know what you do. He set up some stuff, and then it was like Episode 8 purposefully just like dismantled it all.
It really did, yeah.
For what reason? I don't. It was to do it for the sake of it. It was like, look at how much stuff we're just tossing.
Rian Johnson actually started writing the script for that while 7 was still being put together. So I don't know if he willfully ignored what JJ was doing, but there was definitely less communication than you would think there would be, considering these movies cost $250 million to make. You would think that on the top level creative on that sort of level, that there would be that sort of,
Right.
passing the baton, and here's what I've done, and I'm going to try to at least respect what's been there before. But you're right.
Sure.
It felt like a huge middle finger to so much of not only what was done in 7, but also just Star Wars in general. So
yeah. It's interesting because I'll never say I grew up with it, or I don't have any skin in the game with Star Wars. They're fine, the originals are great, but I'm not angry as like you killed my childhood. For me, it's more of just like, dude, Rian Johnson he tried to have that snarky, funny tone and just fell flat on his face. He's like a nerdy funny. He's like a dorky funny, and it just felt
kind of
awkward.
Internet
it was like,
troll funny.
Yeah. There's no way the cast on set was like, this is great, guys.
Right.
They all had to know this was not working because it wasn't. It wasn't working.
Right.
So whatever. It's too bad, but
yeah.
But
so anyway, So well, anyways, thanks for sharing the B movie stuff. Like I know,
Sure.
I mean that's stuff of legend. So I think, I think that little story there actually does a good job of sort of
cool
painting the picture of what happened.
I'm really glad I worked on it. It's fun to be able to talk about. It was a crazy experience, And dude, it was awesome to go interact with Jerry on a daily basis in dailies. It was just
Did you ever
kind of cool to be around the guy that much. It was like, it was weird.
Was there ever I don't know, because I know somebody was telling me that Anthony, the British animator, used to kind of, because I heard that Jerry used to sort of like, not demean, but he'd sort of kind of gave animators a little bit of a hard time or something.
Yeah, he was a dick to me once in dailies, and the producer had to come apologize for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I heard
but
about that.
It wasn't really.
But I heard Anthony would throw it back in his face.
Really?
He was known
I
for
could see that.
Yeah.
I like
because he's like this rough around the edges British guy. So he was like, he wasn't going to have it when Seinfeld. Yeah,
he had a great kind of dry, take no shit way about him. Right. That's cool. I didn't know that. Right. Yeah, for me it was. He kept giving me this note about the way that a bee should land from flying. And one time he just looked at me and he was like, how many times have I shown this to you? And I was like, in my head, I was like, it's a terrible note, Jerry. It's also a really bad note, but
taking a creature animation advice from Jerry Seinfeld to me is just kind of funny to begin with. So
well, that's kind of what that experience was. It was surreal. We were all just kind of they had to. Like a few months into production, they had to go back. We went back and realized he kept giving this note, make the character go like acting to make him go like this, and then they'd go back and look at scenes, and characters just kept doing this. We had to go back and do a hand reduction pass. It was like
they call that the W pose. For animation students, like you never want to do
right.
Yeah, that's actually come up
twinning the tone.
In the podcast, we've actually talked about that. I think it was Joe or someone. Anyways, but
about Jerry.
Yeah, about specifically.
So I'm not the only DreamWorks animator that's never welcome back. It's fine.
No, I mean, I think DreamWorks also has internally changed a lot. I know they've not only gutted like a big part of the staff, but I know that's under new management.
Yeah, Jeffrey sold it, right? It's not even his company anymore.
No, they've sold it to, I think, Illumination or
wow.
I know Comcast is like over it all.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, everything's always changing. Everything's always
for sure
amorphous. So it's not like
right.
It's I think as long as you're a professional and you do good work and you're easy to work with and like you make results. I think that's you're always going to be okay with work. All right, Chris.
I'm good. Q&A. Whoa.
Yes.
All
right, Chris. So for those who don't know,
Charlie's out cold.
Yeah, we got our little mascot there. We're going to move over to the Q&A section of Shot Talk where patrons are allowed to ask questions.
This is not live, though. They're not seeing this, right?
No. I mean, maybe one day eventually.
You guys are legit, man.
We want to eventually do possibly like a live stream or something if there's ever a guest who wants to take the time like to do that, but if and when. So I have a question from a user by the name of Wicked Raiden, which you may or may not be familiar with, Chris.
It's familiar. It's
and this very excitable person asks, first of all, in all caps, he goes, "Yes, my boy," and then he asks, For Chris.
Oh, this is for me. Like,
Yes, this is Q&A
cool.
for you.
Okay.
Yes. I know you're a director, editor, animator, but I see you've done some writing too. What can you recommend to get over creative writer's block? And then also permitted bro duo when?
I knew that would be there.
Yes.
That's a great question, Wicked Ryden. You know, writer's block for me is something that, like, okay, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I throughout my life have been a pretty big gamer. I've liked to play games a lot. And over the last year or so, I have completely cut games out of my life to force myself to just bust my ass in this filmmaking direction. And a big part of that was, you know, I would put off writing for days and days and days, and games made that a lot easier to do. But what I have found is that, and this probably isn't very helpful, but you just got to sit down and start writing. Like, the first half an hour, it's going to be garbage. You're going to hate every bit of it. But I've never not sat down for like 2 or 3 hours and not had at least a half a page where I'm like, I was feeling the flow there. Like, so, you know, this sci-fi feature that I've been talking about in this thing, like, we spent 5 months on a daily basis brainstorming and me writing that. And I found that I just got immersed in that world. It was so cool. Like, my partner and I had to shift, you know, after we finished that feature, we had our goals of like, now we're going to jump onto this comedy feature we've been working on. And it was so hard to like switch those gears from dark, you know, sci-fi horror over to comedy. We were so in that universe for so long, and that was frustrating to switch over, but it was also cool to be like, man, we were really, really in that world. So I think it's just getting in the truck or the car and turning the key, and before you know it, you're immersed in it. It's you're always going to be cold to begin with, but like, you just got to write, man. Just sit down and write.
Yeah.
Like, in the gamut of what it takes to make a movie or a cartoon or anything, writing is the easiest part in terms of what you need. You only need a freaking laptop or a piece of paper and a pencil.
Right.
We take that for granted because to shoot anything, you need exponentially more to do that. Writing is the easiest part in that sense.
Right.
Anyway.
That's cool. I mean, I think to your point, it's just the mental discipline of letting your brain eventually get to where it needs to get to. And I think we do it by accident. Like, you always hear about, you get the best ideas when you're in the shower, when you're driving, because you're like, it's almost accidental. But like, if you set up the conditions for that to happen again, which is just sitting your ass down and letting that happen, like that's the hardest part, is just getting to the gym. That's like, but once you're there,
that's it.
Yeah.
Well, and those are also two very different things that can feel, it's like getting an idea in the shower when you're not even thinking about it versus getting a similarly great idea when you're completely only thinking about that is much harder, but also absolutely happens all the time on a regular, you know, if you do it. Is it weird that I keep looking in that camera?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any
like got in the
necessary rules for how this works.
Yeah, great question, Wicked Ride. And for the second part of that, bro duo,
we'll see.
I don't know, Rod. What do you think? We'll see.
We'll figure it out.
TBD. We feel bad continually saying yes and not delivering something.
You know, full transparency. It's gotta be, for us, it has to be incentivized at this point.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
we've got so many other things going on.
You know, we're not 18-year-olds who just want to play video games and mess about. There's so much going on in each of our respective lives that if there was monetary incentive, then for sure. But yeah. I mean, and it goes without saying that YouTube's kind of a shit show right now. So
it really is.
Trying to monetize that is tough.
It is not exciting. And
unless you want to see like the squeaky clean TNGG where we say gosh golly darn it and we just make funny noises and don't actually have any real jokes. because apparently you can't joke anymore on the internet. But
Yeah, I think yeah, just that with, I have a 3-year, my son is 3 now, and I have a little girl on the way. I don't think I've told you that.
wow,
Exclusive.
wow.
No.
You heard it here,
everyone
folks.
who doesn't know me at
on Shot
all.
Talk.
Yeah, my
Chris
wife is
having a
pregnant.
baby.
So mine's blown, I'm sure. But no, but like, even though it's just an couple hours a week of sitting down and doing that, that has become a large chunk of our time as time goes on. So, it'd be great. It'd be amazing to do it. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe go for a round, resurface it for the 5th time.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question from a guy by I think goes by Jesse. He says, for Chris, when writing comedy, what are the different challenges you face when writing long form things like a feature versus skits?
That is a great question, Jesse. No, that is a really good question, actually. And that's, my partner and I, in pitching some shows and having written one, and we'll probably be doing that again soon. We've got a few things kind of on the horizon. What we have learned is to be very upfront about, and we have also learned what our kind of structure is, at least for a series, and that is to be like It's Always Sunny or Workaholics, in this sense that it's very episodic. There are no arcs. No one grows in our comedy. It's not about comedy coming from the character, really. It's about being silly, ridiculous. The more off the wall, the more just like borderline stupid it is, the better, because we're all about executing a ridiculous idea in a really kind of dry way.
Yeah.
So like the working with Jigsaw and living with Jigsaw, with Living With on Reddit, when that went viral, we got a lot of comments of people saying like, I read the title of this and I thought it was going to be stupid. And then I watched it and it was hilarious. And it's like, yeah, you could give that premise to 10 different people and get 10 varying executions of it, where it's like they try too hard or the puppet's too big or they, and so our MO is like taking ridiculous ideas and executing them in a kind of believably dry way.
That's fun.
And in terms of series, we shy away from like narrative, it's really about consequences not spilling over another. Like with Sunny, they should be arrested at the end of every episode, like they are a bunch of sociopaths, and that's what makes it so amazing. And so we're definitely,
it's like Looney Tunes. It's a reset every time.
Right.
Yeah.
For the longer form stuff, like this feature we're working on right now, it has to have a story. It can't be an hour and a half of shenanigans. Like it's got to be. And so it's been interesting to challenge ourselves in that way. Not to go off on too much of a side road, but I think this does relate to this. We have discovered that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this per se, but we've discovered that we are much more about concepts rather than characters. It's the story or the series of events that we get excited about, and then in talking about those events, we then ask ourselves, well, what would the character do in that event? And in that way, we determine what the character is by saying they're going to do this.
By how they react.
How they would react. There's an opposite way of doing that, which is coming up with great characters first and then letting their personalities dictate what situation they get into. And we have admitted that those are muscles we need to exercise more of, like just talking about characters. Like, who are they? How do we make them interesting without putting them in some mind-bending situation?
I gotcha. Yeah.
And so
I think that's Beavis and Butthead versus like most situational comedies on television, like where those characters are so specific and defined and weird that it's almost all the comedies like rotates around them, versus you might have like a character who's maybe a little more bland, but the events are funny.
They get into a double date on accident. He called 2 girls. What's he gonna do? Yeah, totally.
That kind of thing.
So
that's cool that you're kind of steering that direction. I think Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's and with comedy, it's always juggling. Like, you know, we'll sometimes find that like, oh, we really like this story, but we haven't laughed in 10 pages, you know.
Right.
So it's kind of about, you know, making sure you've got those laughs per minute as well. So yeah,
that's cool, man. Well, Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Always good talking to you. And,
yeah, this has been great, man. And,
yeah, I think we dug up some really cool stuff,
Yeah.
and hopefully some stuff that people can chew on at home.
hopefully, yeah.
Yes. So, all right, we will see you guys next week on the next episode of Shot Talk.
If you like this episode of Shot Talk and would like to see more episodes in the future, join the Shot Talk Patreon at patreon.com/shottalk. You'll get access to private Discord servers, Q&A opportunities for the guests, and more.
Shot Talk would also like to thank the following patrons for their generous contributions.
Also, if you're enjoying these beats, you can follow me at jetsy.bandcamp.com. Thanks, and see you next time.